Parker, how are you, sir?
So good.
So good. So good.
That's funny. That's how I got started.
Listen, you were a guest that my wife has been wanting me to have on for a long time. And I felt bad because you were doing cool things and I saw him and I was like, oh, he doesn't want to talk to me. Because that I've been very blessed in the last 4 or 5 months. People have started, noticing. They're like, oh, Matt's not a crazy person. Like,
right.
He's trying to do cool things. And, you and I finally got connected. Here you are. But you were leading the way with doing cool stuff. Like when I moved here. And again, like my wife, the number of times she was like, you need to get this guy on. I'm like, I know, I just don't want to be too thirsty.
Right.
I don't want to be going after him, trying to, I try to avoid that. But listen, give me some background. How did you get going with this? You obviously are one of those people that sees the world for what it is, which is largely a manufactured kind of everyday crisis. And you're like, look, why? Like we could just do cool things. We could do nice things to each other. We could serve each other. We could support each other, and we could live in a world of abundant support and love and positive actions. Talk to me about this.
Well, it's interesting. People always ask, how did you start So Good? And I always say the same thing. It was kind of on accident. I mean, I think anything that some people set out to do things and some things just happen. One of my favorite movies growing up was It's a Wonderful Life. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Christmas movie.
Yeah.
But it's the story of a man who is a banker in a town, and then there's a richer guy, and he's always competing against this guy for loans and different things, and he's trying his best to be a man of the people. And he doesn't go to college, and he gives his entire he was going to go on a vacation with his wife, their honeymoon, and depression
There's
hits.
There's a run on the bank. $2. We just need to make these grow.
Yeah. But then he has a night where it's Christmas and he's lost some money, and it wasn't even him that lost it. It was his uncle. And he goes to the bridge and he's like, I want out. And it's interesting that the story starts and God's talking to the angel and he says, hey, I need you to go down there. And he's like, is he sick? And he says, no, worse. He's depressed. And he decides that that's what he wants. And the angel's like, yeah, sure, let's do that. So then he goes back into town and there's a casino where there was a restaurant. And he's like, what is this? And he's like, well, you don't exist. And then he goes somewhere else and he's like, well, what about that? And he's like, you don't exist. And I don't know if that seeped into my subconscious, but that's the way I feel like I've been able to live my life, is that I don't know what ripples we're making, but we're making a difference every single day. And it's interesting when you see a movie like that where you pull somebody out and you're like, wow, look at the massive difference. And I don't think you and I will ever get to have something like that. But that's kind of the mission of So Good, is that it doesn't really matter where you are. You can make a difference in this small, area, and you don't even maybe know it. And then the other story I always tell people, and it's probably not a true story, but it's kind of my motto. There was a boy at a beach, and there were a bunch of sea creatures, starfish and different things, and there was a weird moon, and the water had gone farther back than normal. And so he sees them all going out, and he realizes the sun's coming up, and so he goes and starts throwing them back into the ocean. And his grandpa runs out and grabs him and says, hey, there's a million of these things. You're never going to make a difference. And he throws one, and as he throws it, he says, I made a difference to that one. And anytime I've had a negative review on social media, or someone's come to me and said, hey, you know how many people live here? You know how much left and right, kind of ideology there is? You're not going to make a difference. And I see a vet that needs help with a resume, and I sit down and write that resume, and I look at him and I say, I made a difference for that one. And that's So Good. That's my day every day, and it's just it's been incredible.
Man, I'm not going to make it through this conversation. That's it. That's everything, right? It's the enormous crushing burden of life, of all of it, right? Like you can be taken, and there's there's a city councilwoman, Natalie Jangula from Nampa. Really enjoy this gal. She's been on the podcast, and I chat with her occasionally. And she puts on her Facebook story game is like top notch. So I'll go, and I post and ghost. I don't hang out on Facebook. I just drop things off, and people consume them, and I move on. But Natalie, anytime I touch on her stories, it's like I lose 5 minutes because she puts on, she'll have like 30 or 40, small little clips about stuff in the world. And it could be towers coming down. It could be the moon landing. It could be the economy. It could be all of these things. And I know I'll get sucked into it. And I also know when I get sucked into it, as soon as I turn it off, I have this sinking like, what can you even do?
Right.
What can you even do? And I have to shake that off instantly because that's so all consuming for people. The anxiety, the enormity of it is so all consuming. It's so difficult right now today to understand what's right, what's wrong, what's happening. I was telling you right before we got going, Governor Little vetoed the medical freedom bill, and people are really, really upset about it. And they're really, really upset because the majority of them have gone through an experience in the last 5 years where they felt the federal government took over their personal health. They took over their health independence and autonomy, and they forced things onto them that were really bad. And some people went along with it, and they're really not happy about it. Some people didn't go along with it, and they're making fun of the people that did. Like, some people didn't go along with it, and bad things happened to them, like they got fired and stuff. Everyone's really worked up about this. And they're bringing this, they're focusing all of that frustration, on Governor Little for vetoing the bill. And what I've been telling people is, look, all of that, your personal experience is real. What's happened to you is real, whatever it might be. But what this bill also had was provisions so that businesses could no longer determine who they were going to do business with. Right? The state of Idaho was attempting to legislate who, a movie theater, a bowling alley, a restaurant had to do business with. And that's not something that most people in Idaho enjoy. They like the idea that, say, a bakery could select who they do business with. No shoes, no shirt, no service. Let's say I'm a coffee shop. I'm like, you walk in without a shirt, you're not coming in here. I reserve the right to do business. And when I explain that to people, they realize, okay, everything I feel might actually be true. And I might like that portion of this legislation, but this legislation isn't perfect and it has this other really bad thing that we don't like, And that's just a tiny example of people getting so upset. And then one little detail, they're like, oh no, like I didn't know that. And now it becomes this giant complexity where it's like, oh crap, what do we do?
Yeah.
What do we do? Like, I want this thing. I don't want this thing. They're married together. I didn't even know this is a thing. How do we get this? Why did they even put this thing in there? Like all of these problems, man. And I feel like it's so much for people. And at the end of the day, the right thing is to just do a good thing, right? The right thing is not to find a solution to solve all the problems. It's like, what can I do right now, right here with these two hands? What can I do to move the needle forward in the most inconsequential, irrelevant way? Fine, I admit it. I'm not going to help everyone, but I'm going to help this one person.
Right. And that's hard. That's it. That's eloquently said. I mean, it's tough because I think sometimes you just, with so many avenues of media, right? It used to be just the paper and you'd put it down. And if you didn't want to read it, you just didn't read it for a couple of days and you didn't know what was going on. I mean, when I was a kid, if you didn't read the paper, then you didn't know much. And then you'd be like, all right, I'm going to give it another try. And now it's kind of like, it's all around us. It's interesting. And
it's, if I may, it's all around us and people are incentivized not to give you reality. It's all the incentivization mechanism of like, I will give you money if you can say the craziest thing and get the most eyeballs here. That's the nature of this entire mechanism.
Right.
That's what people are doing. So it's not that it's not like there are 20 newspapers and they're all like this, dispassionate, like, well, these are the facts, folks, like whatever. And it's like all the 20 are just throwing facts at you. And you're like, wow, like there's so much just unbiased information surrounding me. Like, I guess, what am I going to pick from? No, it's like people screaming one side of something at you because they're getting paid to scream it.
Yeah. It's important. I mean, it's definitely important. I try to not look at it as much as others. I'm probably too busy to do so too. But yeah, I mean, there's so many. I'll tell you a story. When my daughter was in 6th grade, she started going to Lewis and Clark. So up through 5th grade, she was at Joplin or wherever the
Whatever
elementary school.
Yeah,
exactly. And when I had gotten married in the Marine Corps, I married a girl from Puerto Rico, and so my daughter was dark and didn't look a lot like me, and so it was very, protective. Just make sure it's like, getting picked on and stuff.
Sure.
So, first day at school, she rides the bus, and she comes home and she gets off and she's crying. I could tell she's been crying, and she doesn't want to talk about it. And I'm Marine Corps dad. I'm coming. So I get her to the house and I say, what happened? And she says, there was a girl on the bus and she grabbed my backpack and pulled it and ripped it. First day. I'm like, oh, great. Picking on my kid because she doesn't look like you, right? I've got my narrative already.
Hot blood.
Yeah. So I walk her to the bus stop the next day, and there's the girl, got her hat backwards, a little taller. And I walk up and I say, oh, I think it's cool to pick on people. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, yeah, you do. You definitely do. You grab my daughter's backpack because she doesn't look like you, and you don't like her, and you ripped it, and you hurt her feelings, and I don't like that. And she's like, I really don't know what you're talking about. And I said, oh, okay, let's do it this way. When you get off the bus, I'll just figure out where you live. I said that. The kind, gentle,
so good
red
guy.
Yeah, so good guy. So I don't think anything of it. And a few minutes later, I get a call and they're like, hey, this is so-and-so from the principal of Lewis and Clark. We got a kid here. Says that you said that you were going to follow her home. I'm like, oh, this isn't good. They're like, the parents want to talk to you. We got a dad that's mad. So now I'm staring down at a dad who's like, you told my child that you were going to follow them home? Like, they don't know you. You're an adult. And this realization came over me that, like, I made it worse. I hurt someone else. Like, I was trying to do something for someone that hurt me, and I ended up hurting a child. And I apologized, of course, profusely to the child and to the parents. And something like that hasn't happened since. But I think that happens so much these days where it's like, I get hurt. And it's like, I don't have all the facts, so I'm going to hurt you, And you mentioned the story of the thing. It's like, maybe you didn't even read the bill to its entirety. You read the first little part that said, hey, they're coming for you. And you were like, well, I'm going to hit back. And, an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. And I tell you that story because it's like, it happens. And the end of that story was I got my daughter home and she's like, Dad, I honestly think what happened was the bus came to a stop and my backpack was on the ground and it went and she grabbed it and it got caught on something and she didn't mean to rip it. So not only do I not have all the facts, it didn't even happen, And it was a lesson for me, to take pause. And I just tell that story because, like, you can be a good person with good intentions and I'm going down there and I'm going to face the bully. And I humiliated a kid in front of other kids and I, said something stupid and completely ignorant,
Man, if I had a nickel in my life for every time, there's a real classic psych experiment where they tell a bunch of people that these respondents are like, hey, look, we're gonna do something. We're gonna have you go in for an interview.
Right.
Okay. And they and they tell them that they're, you know, like, we're going to do your makeup, this whole thing. And they tell them that they screwed up their makeup. So the person like thinks they have, you know, like mascara or something, or like there's this big problem on their face. Okay. And they can't do anything about it.
Right.
And they go in and, you know, this version of an experiment where like they put an accidental scar. They're like, oh no, it looks like a scar on your face, whatever.
Right.
People think there's this glaring thing on their face and they go in for an interview and they don't get, you know, whatever they're interviewing for. And in the follow-up, you know, debrief, like, why do you think they didn't go for it? They're like, well, it's obviously what's on my face. Like, it's obvious you screwed up thing, or I got a scar, all these things. And they show them a mirror. It was all a lie. But their whole view was that something bad had happened because of this reason. First week I moved here. I did not move here. Things were very tense when we moved here. Okay. That's just a fact. I had lived in the same 5-mile radius my entire life growing up. Okay. And my wife lived from the area. All of our family was there. So to get us to move from that area to here, my wife had never even been to Idaho. I was the only one that came up, and I was here for 48 hours. And that I came up because a friend of mine was here, a very dear friend. And he was like, this is a good place for kids. And I looked at my wife, I was like, we need a good place for our kids. That was our primary goal. And so we move up here. Things are incredibly tense. Right? We don't know the area. We don't know people. We don't know the neighborhood. And our kids go to school, and everything you hear when you're moving here is, you know, they hate Californians. They hate Californians, all these things. It's my wife. The day we get here, she like gets our license plates switched out, like this whole thing, right? Thank God I don't have any tattoos that say like California and stuff. And we get a call from the elementary school first day. And they're like, hey, somebody punched one of your kids. And I was like, oh my God. What?
Yeah.
Where the fuck are we? Like, what do you mean? And this is elementary school. And I was like, what is happening? And of course, it's like, oh my God. They found out. My son said he was from California. Like, they found out and somebody assaulted him. Like, oh my God, we're going to have to move again. Like, don't even unpack. And so I go to the school because my wife is understandably flipped out. Like, we are just like, why? It was already traumatic, you know, leaving everything we'd ever known. And I get to the school and I sit down with the principal, and I'm used to just ineffective, crappy administrators. And this woman right away is like, hey, sit down. She brings her chair out from the other side of the desk, sits in front of me. I'm like, this is different. And I'm like, listen, what happened? She goes on to explain. She's like, this kid, the kid that hit your son, has been on, you know, he's been on restriction from recess for like a month because he has a history of doing bad things, right? And this was a chance for him to, like, today was literally his first day back on the playground. He didn't talk to your son. He doesn't know your son. They didn't exchange 2 words. He just did something that he thought was going to be funny. And by the way, he's in big trouble now. We immediately grabbed it, stopped it. I chatted with your son. This is the principal. She's like, I pulled your son aside and I chatted with him. I checked in with him at the time, in the next recess, at lunch, the whole thing. And I realized really quickly walking out, it's like, okay, same thing as you. Like, wait, you had this thing in your head, like you were ready to move again,
right?
You know, to all these things, and none of it's even reality. Like, right. Yeah, there was a crummy kid. Not a crummy kid. There's a kid that's obviously struggling at the elementary school. Yeah. And he's struggling. He has something going on with his own journey. And your son came into contact with him. Has nothing to do with your son. Has nothing to do with where you guys moved from.
For sure.
Like, and just taking that, but like, even that, I got really down on myself. It's like, you're too ready to be hurt. You're too ready to have somebody do something bad to you. You're too ready to be like, this isn't right. And yeah, it's not right that somebody hit my son. Yeah. Like, of course, that's not right. But, you know, it's also true that like kids in elementary school sometimes hit each other, and we should do something about that and get that kid help. Like but like, it's not personal, you know, like people are so ready to feel like everything about them is
instant feelings. And, I mean, just us two talking as men, you know, that's something, you know, I, even after that, have to work on. You know, I have 5 kids, 3 amazing bonus kids, and 2 that are my own, and they've all went to West Ada. 2 of them have graduated. 2 of them are in high school and 1 of them is in 8th grade. But I was doing the math the other day. They've been in West Ada for 50 years.
Wow.
50 years. And there's been little things here and there, but there's been amazing teachers. There's been amazing, people involved in that organization that helped my kids along the way. And so to your point, you can look at it and go, I'm waiting for something bad to happen, or I can try to do something good. And it's intentional. It has to be intentional. So, I mean, if anyone's listening to this, just you and me talking, if you get up in the morning and you say, I'm going to look for someone to help today, you'll always find them. Yesterday, I was in a coffee shop and a guy walked in and he said, hey, I don't mean to, cut in line, but would you mind if I go in front? And I said, yeah, sure, whatever. I'm just whatever. So he got up there and he said, hey, if I buy a coffee, can I get cash back? And the lady was like, no, but you can pay with cash. And he was like, okay. So he kind of walked away and I said, hey, what's going on? He's like, oh, well, I just parked out front and I don't have any quarters and I don't have any cash. So I figured I could just get a cup of coffee and maybe I could get change back.
Yeah, right.
And I said, here you go, buddy. I got $2. And he's like, oh, hey, my name's, so-and-so. And I'm in it. But like, I woke up and I was like, look for someone. And it's just been intentional. And so if you're looking to start a fight, or if you're looking for somebody to offend you, to your point, if you're looking for that, that will happen as well. It will. It just will. It will happen.
And you're surrounded then in a world with people that are ready to fight you.
For sure. And it's interesting, my daughter went to Mountain View, was a tough school, a lot of bullying. It really is. High school's tough.
High school's
it's
tough.
Tougher than you and I went because we didn't have social media. So someone can make fun of you and it can spread, where before it was kind of like a little elbow and like, hey, did you hear something? Now it's like and it's fact based. So someone took a picture and boom, it's out there. You can't really control that narrative. But I used to tell her, I read this thing and it said, children that need love show it in the most unloving ways. And if you can just grab that and hold that, you just want to give them a hug. And, there's been times my kids had come home and they're like, Dad, this happened. And it's true. It happened. And I was like, that kid just moved here from somewhere and he doesn't have parents and he doesn't have a system like you do,
There was coming out of the elementary school parking lot last year, the end of last year, we were coming out, we drive like Toyota, nothing crazy, and there was this, I've always been like a practical car guy. And there was this, I think it was like an IROC or something, but not like a nice one.
Right.
It was some muscle car. I can't remember what it was. And, a couple different colors on it. It's like somebody replaced a door or something. And I was like, whatever, no big deal. And it pulls out the elementary school and then like stops in the center lane. And I realized like the car's not going. It's either out of gas or it's stopped or something. And, I'm with my wife and go around the corner because there wasn't any place for us to stop. Go around the corner, run out, and man, there's this girl in there with her mom. The interior panels on the door, or at least the door I saw, are like gonzo. Just like plastic's gone, it's just metal. And I did what I could to help, this family because, she was obviously stopped. She didn't have her cell phone. Right. Trying to call her husband or boyfriend or whoever it was. And I like got her a piece of paper. We're in the middle of the road, by the way. I got her a piece of paper and a pen. I was like, she's like, call this guy or text this guy and tell him where we are. I was like, yeah, 100%. It's like, get him going. And, the guy's like, got it. Okay. On the way. And so I run back like, he's on the way. You guys all right? Do you need pushed to the side? And she was like, we're okay. And there was a center turn lane. So they really appeared that they were safe enough. They weren't safe. They're in the middle of the road, but like they were safe enough. They were going to get gas, whatever it was. And man, if you're just behind that car, you have no idea what's going on with those people. You have no idea what that little girl is going home to. You have no idea that car is barely hanging on, what the situation and life experience around that family, what they're trying. Like I saw that and my heart just went out for that girl, for that mom, like wanting to provide for your family,
absolutely,
wanting to take care of your baby. And like, you either don't have money to even get gas. You don't have money for like a proper vehicle. Like you don't, and it's everywhere. and you can look at those people and be annoyed that they're blocking the turn lane,
Right.
or know that it's like someone's going through hell and they're trying as best they can to keep their stuff together while getting their girl to school on time and picking her up. Like it's everywhere, you know. And I agree with you, if you're going out in the world looking for reasons to be not happy, you'll find them, man.
Yeah.
But if you go out into the world looking for reasons to have compassion and see the difficulty of life and just be overwhelmed with gratitude for what you have today, because that's what I left with. Like, I got a Sequoia. It's not even a cool car.
Yeah.
It's a great car. We bought it used.
Yeah.
Like, but it's a great car. You know, the whole ride home, I couldn't shake it. It's like, what if I was picking up my babies in a 78 IROC with a missing door panel that ran out of gas? Like, how would I feel as a parent? And it's like, God, like I just had gut rot.
Right.
And when the gut rot went away, it was enormous and unyielding gratitude for what I do have. And it's like, God, man, that's everywhere. Like gratitude's everywhere. Appreciation's everywhere. Opportunities to help everywhere. And if, again, it's a frame of mind. You go out looking for it. It's like, it's all there. All of humanity's there. All of the good, all of the bad. Right. And it's so cliche to even talk about it, but it's so true, you know, and
it is cliche, but it's definitely needed. Right. It's needed more than ever. I mean, we're no dummies. We can see what's going on around us. It's definitely needed more than ever, I believe, which is what we're trying to do. Honestly, that's all we're trying to do. You mentioned, you know, like a couple of things I definitely want to make sure and say. One, Idaho is amazing, and it has amazing people. And I know because our families are always helping. So if all I knew was just that microcosm, it's great. It's got great people, you know, and I could go on and on, you know. Mitzi, the we call her the veteran godmother of Idaho. If all you did was just watched her, what she's interacting with, your day would be made. She's incredible, doing incredible things.
Who's Mitzi?
She's the head of a veteran organization for the state of Idaho, and she goes out and helps veterans in need, from the very top all the way to the very bottom.
I would love to talk to her. If she would be willing to come to the show.
She's called the fairy godmother of veterans. Just amazing stories of veterans that need help. You know, Dave Fisher has given his life to IVN. You know, you mentioned Bill Roscoe. I was at lunch the other day with someone that was pretty prominent in Idaho, and people knew them to the extent that when I was at lunch with them, they were like walking by like, ooh, that's so-and-so. And Bill was over there. And so I mentioned to the person, do you know that guy, Reverend Roscoe? And he was like, no, don't know who that is. And I was like, that's probably the most influential person in Idaho. And he's like, really? How so?
Really? The dude with white hair and glasses?
And I was like, he wakes up every day trying to help people get off the street. And there's people that have come out of that and now are living lives. You and I have no idea what that's like. You have no idea what that burden is and what it means to be down there. And that's the thing that is, if I'm frustrated or disappointed about anything, it's that I just wish more people would just, you know, be involved in that. But I can't expect that from people. But sometimes I'll look and it'll be like people will change their Facebook background picture and then they'll, you know, make a comment or they'll wear a shirt or something. And I'm like, but what if we went down to the food bank, you know, and we made boxes for people in need? What if we got our hands dirty? And so that's the thing. And I will say this, if you actually go down there and do that kind of stuff, you'll be so much more happy. You know, there's a saying, it's more blessed to give than receive. And we believe that. And we know that as parents, we've seen it even in our kids, you know, when they give a gift or we give them one, we're like so excited. But then we kind of forget about it. And so one of the messages I have it so good, and one of the things I always like to tell people is if you're struggling, come out and help. And they say, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, it's just like going to the gym. You never get up and go, man, I really want to go to the gym today. But you go, and then you're like, man, I'm so glad I did. And if you go to the food bank with us, you'll meet 20, 25 people helping, loving, and you'll feel that community. And you may have just had a tough day and you're struggling, but you kind of get your mind off that for a little bit. you see that other people are in need. You have gratitude for your own situation, that you're like, man, it's actually better than I thought. And you begin to have some happiness and real joy fill your life from that.
Yeah. A dear friend of mine, Dave, who I've been very lucky to be friends with for years. And, he's very connected to his church, and he's a great guy. He also, he was a wrestler at BYU. I got to know him because we trained jiu-jitsu together.
Oh, nice.
First day I meet Dave, he's like a fire hydrant, both in skin tone and like, stuck. And he's an absolute killer. His like neck goes all the way out to his shoulders. Like
right.
We've had this incredible relationship, both on and off the mats. But the thing that has always got me is how on point and clear Dave is about some things. And one of them is, if you want to improve yourself, if you want to better yourself, you have to focus on other people. You can't improve yourself by just looking at yourself. And he told me this years ago, and I have had my own personal journey and growth since that time, but it's so clear. It's painfully clear. I found myself in a bad situation at the beginning of 23. And, for a number of reasons, I was like, this isn't like, what have you been doing is not it. Like, I think a lot of people at some point find themselves there. And I was very fortunate to realize, like, okay, look, whatever you're doing, it's not the world, it's what you're doing. What you're doing isn't working. Okay. So let's start there. This is on you. And considering it's on you, you get to decide what you're going to do with this. And the first thing I realized I needed to do was find a community that I could contribute to, that I had something valuable to offer. And that, to me, in that moment, I was like, I've been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time. I know those people. I haven't been, what would happen if I just threw myself into that? And I did. And at the time, it was like, I was out of shape. I hadn't been training much. I was in a bad way in my head, and I started training twice a day. And I'd go, and it's not like I was getting fantastic world-class training. I was going to contribute. I was going to help people learn. I was going to share what I knew. I've been at it for a minute. And almost instantaneously, things started turning around. People were looking forward to seeing me. I had something valuable to give. I was hurting physically, like my hands. I was starting to get, it's pretty physically demanding. Like there were problems that were coming my elbow and my neck, and I was going anyway. I had a reason to tolerate the pain. I had a reason. I was like, I gotta go, because I told Steve I'd show him this choke, and he's got a tournament coming up. Like I know this hurts, but I don't care. Right? Like train one-handed. It doesn't matter. Like do whatever you got to do. And I had this reason to keep pushing forward.
Right.
And that I was really lost my first year here. And that helped jumpstart me to get me back on the path of like, oh, this is it. You spent the first year here drinking beer and worrying about hanging out with people you just met, and you weren't adding anything to anyone. Like that's why you ended up miserable. Right? Like you didn't tax the system. You didn't push your body. You didn't push your mind. You didn't do it. Like you were just this self-interested little squirrely weirdo who just moved to a different state. It's like, that's why you ended up miserable at the end of 22.
Right.
And coming out of that, man, that's something that helped me. And so many people I've talked to that have gone through phases, 9 times out of 10, they come back to like, I had to find somebody to serve. I had to help other people, and that reoriented them.
And that's such an interesting concept, because I feel like, most of the message is self-love, self-care, and it's true. And here's what I would say about that: don't light yourself on fire to keep other people warm. And what I mean by that is like, don't burn out and destroy, yourself or your family. And so there's a balance.
There's a line.
There's a line there, but I have never been happier than I have in the last 10 years. And every day just keeps getting better. Every single day. And I know it goes against the grain. I know that we're giving our money to others, and we're running this nonprofit, and people will say, I wouldn't do it that way. But then I will ask, like, well, what's your level of happiness? Because if you can honestly say that you're happy, then that's fine. But if you're not,
good for you.
I'm telling you, this way is pretty cool. Is a lot of stuff, to give back. And there's so much, especially with my kids. The other day we were coming out of the mall, and when I was a kid, there was no mall. 184 wasn't there. The mall wasn't there. There was a Plush Pippin's pie place. But anyways, my boy's 15. And when I got to my truck, the car right next to us, same kind of situation. Kind of an older car, needed some work. The tires didn't match, but the front tire was flat. Hispanic family, no one spoke English. I used to speak Spanish when I was in California. And my son took Spanish, and his side of the family is his mom. They speak Spanish and stuff, and so we got it figured out. Yeah. And I said, "Hey, look, I've got a NASCAR jack in the back of my truck, and then I've got a DeWalt impact drill. I'll change this thing in 2 seconds." So
you have a NASCAR jack? You roll around.
Yeah, it would be funny to find out how many tires I've changed in 84 on 84 and in Idaho. I probably changed one a week. I have changed them in every climate, everywhere. And so as I began to see people on the side of the road,
hang on. I'm sorry, I got to interrupt. Do you carry the NASCAR jack expressly so you can help? Oh my God!
So I have.
Can you buy one of these on Amazon? You're changing my life right now.
Yeah,
I'm getting a NASCAR jack, and I'm gonna have a socket.
So I have a 12 socket set. It has the 5-spoke and the 7-spoke, which are for the ones you can't steal.
Yeah. Those fancy keys.
The fancy keys. Because I did one time. It was like 1 a.m. I was on 84. I was with my wife, and it was a young girl. She had a Subaru, and I popped out, and it was really funny. She was talking to her dad on the phone, and he was like, "Hey, if somebody stops, you got to be really careful." And she was like, "Well, what should I do?" And so she rolled down the window a little bit, and she was like, what's going on? And I told her, "Hey, I'm here. My wife's in the truck if you want." She was by herself, and I heard her dad say, "Well, tell me the license plate." And she's like, "It's a SO space GOOD." And he's like, "So good?" And she's like, "Yeah, his license plate said so good." And I was laughing, thinking the dad over there, trying to be safe for his daughter. But so I've got a NASCAR jack in the back that's just awesome. I changed one the other day at Bogus Basin with it. It's so great. It's just if you've got the crank style, I can just 2-3 pumps and it's off the ground. And then electric DeWalt, and then I've got a battery starter, like the kit, and then also an air compressor built in. So it's an air compressor / battery jump start kit. And it's been awesome. It's just been so fun when you see someone and you're like, "Oh, I got you." So anyways, we're at the mall, Hispanic family, and so we changed the tire, and it's gracias and thank you and stuff. And I got in the truck and I looked at my boy and I said, how people will say, Idaho's whatever, enter the word. I hope that was like their first initiation. Where they just drove up from wherever in the middle of somewhere and tried to get out of a situation, and they moved to Idaho, and their first thing was 2 people that were like, "I got you." And to me, that's what makes Idaho great. And I always say to people, like, if you can't find it, be it, right? So to your point, you have to look for it. And then I love the idea that I'm going to change the perception of Idaho one person at a time. If there is a perception that is out there that's bad, my perception is obviously it's amazing because I'm from here, and I'll speak to the California thing. I think, because I was born here. And then when I was 7, we moved to Pomona, California to start a school for kids that had been kicked out of other schools. So that's what my dad ran. And then I joined the Marine Corps and came back to Idaho via Idaho State Police. But, I've always felt like the reason Idaho people don't like other people is it's just like a sharing thing, and it makes sense. It's like In-N-Out Burger. Do you want to wait 2 hours for a burger at In-N-Out Burger? Like, no. And so then you just are like, this sucks, but it's like it's really good. That's why there's all these people, and so that's why I always tell people, they're like, I remember when this was a field, and I'm like, I do too. But when something's really good, people come. It's like the gold rush. It's like. That's what I feel like. And so if you go back to California, no knock against it. I think it's getting better. I think everything swings in pendulums. But you hear about Idaho and you're like, what? Like, that sounds great. Let's go. And then there's kind of this backlash, like, hey, we don't want you here. And there's only one sticker that bothers me in Idaho, and it's the "we're full" sticker. And I always laugh about that because I'm like, if you drove an hour from Boise in any direction, we're not full.
We're not full.
Boise might just have a few people, but we're not full, come on out. Just, start spreading, up north, start moving toward other places. Let's build it out. But, you know, I was born here at Nampa at Mercy Medical. I'm an Idaho guy, lived in California, came back. And my message to people from Idaho that don't want other people in is like, what do you think's going to happen when other places aren't as good? I was looking the other day, and we just kind of take a right turn, but I was like looking up the deadliest cities in America, and the top 5 are in Mexico. Well, don't you think that that is going to cause people to want to move to some place that's safer? Like if I lived in a city that was top 5 in the world, I want to go somewhere where it's better.
Right.
So that's what I would always say is like, remember that you came here, remember that you moved here, remember how it felt to start over. So, yeah, I think I'm the opposite of most Idaho people. If you're from California, you know, change your plates at some point, just so no one's, you know, mean to you. But join in, welcome in. Yeah. You know, come float the Boise River, go to the Meridian Speedway. It's a classic thing, you know, do the Idaho things. I love you. You're welcome here. And that's the thing, you know, I've seen signs of all types, like you're welcome here, except for this. I don't have an except. You're welcome here. All the things, you're all of them. You just, you know, we're just humans trying to figure out, and you're loved by me and my family. I'll say that.
Man, I so appreciate that you're saying that. And you know, the thing that gets me is I always come back to compassion, because to me, I look at somebody who's wearing one of the shirts, right? The infamous shirts that have now become a thing around West Ada, that everyone's welcome here. Somebody's wearing that in the Home Depot the other day. My friend was telling me about this. He's an older dude, goes to Home Depot to get, you know, like a key copy or something. And there's a guy with a cart with like a doorknob and a stick of lumber wearing one of the shirts, and there's a gal like fighting with him about it in the Home Depot. And that makes my blood boil. But at the same time, I try to think about like what would have to be going on in that woman's life.
For sure.
What's going on in her head that she feels that she needs to like engage in an altercation with a complete stranger in the Home Depot, right? What, like, where doers do, or whatever the thing is, right? Like, why, what's going on there? And that's something that gives me pause. Because again, I have this initial like revulsion towards that. But then again, if I'm thinking about it, it's like, okay, you can be really upset and disgusted that people are fighting in Home Depot. That's fine. That's embarrassing. That's terrible. It's all these things. But also try to figure out like, okay, why? What's happening for that person that they feel so compelled and convicted, and that they want to engage in that? And that's ultimately what I think we all have to come to, which is we have to understand each other. We don't have to agree. We do not have to agree. 1,000%. I do not agree with fighting somebody in Home Depot over a shirt. I do not agree with that categorically. I do think, though, that if we start understanding like, hey, what's going on for you? Like, are you upset about this, or are you upset about something else? And if you're upset about something else, what was that thing? And do you see that thing here? Because a lot of times when the people I've experienced that are most convicted and worked up over things here, they're not mad about this stuff. They're mad about something else that happened. I'll give you a point in case. Chief Tominski comes in. He's the chief of the Star Fire Department, fire district. He comes in, and this was last year. They were trying to run a bond or a levy. I can't remember. It's like levy, override levy. There it was. Because he said, look, we have the city of Star has gone from like 11,000 people to 22,000 people in like 4 years, or blink of an eye, right? And as such, like, if you just imagine, fire response proportional to the population, we theoretically doubled in fire response needs, right? And he said, look, we got impact fees and mitigation fees, but those only cover one-time expenses like a building. They don't cover the repetitive cost of a salary. He said, so I can build another fire station in Star right now today. I don't have the money for the salaries because I need 9 people. Right. I can't even add 1 person. I need to add like 9 people. It's not like with law enforcement, you can increase 1, 2, 3. With fire, it's a threshold. Like you need a certain number of people to even operate a station. Okay. And so he came in to express this, and he said that there was a gentleman that he would interact with frequently that would come to, his presentations or make commentary, and he'd say like, look, I'm a firefighter. I will never vote for this, or I'm a retired firefighter. And Chief Tominski said, okay, like, help me understand what's going on. Like, what is that? And this gentleman's experience in, both of our former states was he was a firefighter, and they did funding differently in that state. Here, the Star Fire District is its own taxing entity. Whatever money goes into that stays in the Star Fire District. Okay. But back in this guy's former state, what would happen is the city paid for the fire service. And so what the city would do is intentionally shortfall the budget for fire and then appeal to the residents saying, we need, $3 million because we don't have the $3 million budget for the fire department. Now, mind you, they wrote the budget, so the fire department was shorted. We don't have the $3 million. The voters would say, oh, well, of course, we need fire service. Like, of course, here's the $3 million. They'd self-tax, okay, to the tune of $3 million, whatever it might be. And then the city would be like, got it now.
Yeah.
And they'd take the money. And so this guy felt like if they approved any increase in funding towards the fire district, that the city would just take it. And the chief had to explain to him time and time again, he's like, there's no way for any of these cities to touch our budget because we do things differently here. Here, this poor guy had this life experience of being like pillaged and raided by the city over and over and over.
Yeah.
And he brought that hurt with him and frustration. Yeah. And he was going to I'm going to change things here. And it's like, okay, thank you for explaining that. But now that we know that, let me rest assured, it doesn't work that way here, right? And you can help people, but you'd never know if you didn't just sit down and talk with them. Like if Chief Tominski was like, oh, screw you, whatever, like you're bad. It's like, you'd never know, but you can sit down and explain it. And now the guy's like, oh, maybe this isn't a bad thing. It's like, yeah, maybe it's not a bad thing, man.
Right. It's just discourse. And I mean, you and I were parents. I've got kids. We've talked about it, but there's been so many times, your kids will come in and say, this is the way it happened. Right. I got hit. And then you talk and you're like, all right, well then, what did you do? Oh, yesterday you did this. Okay, now.
How many boys do you have?
4.
Okay.
Yeah, 4 boys. Yeah, 4 boys and 1 girl. 19.
And before yesterday, what did he do? Well, last week.
Yeah. And then you start to build the picture of like, okay, you came into this with this idea, you came into it, and that's our job as parents, to sit down and have the discourse and say, hey, this wasn't fair that you did. This wasn't fair. And we're not going to get everybody at the table, but we can get a few, and we can start down that road. And, and the reason I said the story about, the me at the bus stop, and I'll tell you another story. My wife, we've been married for several years, but she has an ex and I have an ex, and I don't even like to say the word ex. I like to say former spouse. It's hurtful for some reason. Like the former spouse, I feel like it's a chapter. I don't want to say anything negative.
You also don't want to betray your younger self.
Yeah.
Like there was a younger version of you that felt great love and connection.
Absolutely.
It's like that younger person wasn't wrong.
I love that you say that. Cause I feel like it's like a chapter. And so like in chapter 2, you wanted to be a fireman, and you had a fireman's helmet, and you were 6 years old, and then you were 10, you were like, oh, I want to do this. You don't look back and you're like, what a dummy.
What an idiot.
You're just like,
2-year-old me.
There's the person who was in that capacity. So anyways, my wife has a former spouse. And so, and he makes life difficult sometimes, but it's just life. That's just life.
Sure.
So one day my wife and I were at Fred Meyer's, and she was like, hey, every time I go to get gas, I don't have any bonus points. And I'm like, what, you think that I'm stealing your gas points?
You're like, baby, we share the same bed. I'm not stealing your gas points.
So she was like, it's just weird though. Like I haven't had them in a while. So I'm like, all right, let's go into Fred Meyer's. So we go into Fred Meyer's, and I said, hey, could you print out a report for the last 3 years of every time we used gas points? Because I don't know if you go to Fred Meyer's, but you can get 20, 30 cents. Yeah. So they say, do it, and I look at it, and I'm like,
dude, I would never have thought to go to customer service. You are operating at another level.
All these places aren't near my house. 3 years I've not been using. I've been giving my gas points. So then on the end, it has a 4-digit code of the card. I'm like, I don't recognize that. So I went through all my cards, my wife's cards. Forget it. Don't worry about it. So a couple weeks later, the former spouse comes and says, hey, we need to settle up on some dental bills and stuff. And here you go. And I look at the receipt and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the card.
Oh my God.
So, you know, kindness and helpfulness and benefit and loving people.
So
people.
after they separated you guys and bloodied on the floor.
No. They were long gone. They were long gone before I looked at the receipt. So the next day I was in Fred Meyer's with my son, and we were checking out, and at Fred Meyer's there's a gift card, and it says for someone who needs a hand, and it's got a hand holding another hand. So I said to my son, I'm going to get $100 gift card. I'm going to give it to him, and I'm going to say, hey, instead of stealing, you can just have this card. And my son's like, Dad, that's a bad move. That's not from kindness. That's a middle finger. This dude tried to hurt you in some capacity. I don't think he needed the money or the gas. It's just put in the phone number every time and I'm doing something to, make life difficult. And I was like, oh, good point. Very next day I went and bought that card, and I wrote a card and I said, hey, if you're struggling and you need something, just reach out. Didn't come from the heart. Total pride moment. Total, I'm being kind, but it was meant to, like, I know that you did it, and gave him. So I sent the card to the house in like a nice card, like a card within, and then the gas card in there. And 10 minutes later, I get a call from Boise PD, and they were like, hey, did you send something to an individual? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, well, that individual wants to file federal charges because you put a card into it without a stamp. Because I was going by there anyway, and so I just put it in the mailbox. And federally, you're not supposed to put stuff in. So I go in, and I'm sitting in Boise PD.
You had to go to the police department.
Yeah, because they want to talk about it. And they're like, this person wants to file a thing. And you know who I was upset at? I was upset at myself. Why didn't I just listen to my son and just turn the other cheek and just walk on and change the phone number and go do something good? And I made it worse with my own, like, I'll get back. It's like you mentioned the guy in the shirt. It's like, I could have just walked away. I could have just seen it and said, that's not the way I want to live my life or whatever, and just walked away. And then I also tried to add like I'm a kind person, so that's out of kindness, but it wasn't kind. Can you imagine if you were a dude and you did that to somebody, and you open your mailbox and there's $100 gift card and a card that says, hey, if you need a help, don't steal, I got you. That person's not going to reach out to you. That person's not going to cross the aisle and say, you know what, dude, I am struggling. Now, if they did, I'd have been blown away, and then I would have been ashamed, because I'd have been like, that's exactly that wasn't what I was trying to do. That wasn't my motive. My motive was to hurt. My motive was to embarrass. My motive was to say, I caught you, and I
want you to know.
And I want you to know that I got you. And it really gave me pause. Like, what is the kindness that I'm trying to portray? And this is why I feel like it made things worse. So like a week later, we were going to do something, and we needed to have the kids all on the same day. So we reached out and said, hey, we'd like to do this event. And the answer was no. The answer was no because I did something that was infuriating, right? So who in the end got the short end of the stick? The children, right? It affected them because they are now not having access to something they want to do because of some of my pride. So I feel like sometimes it's like, the situation that you mentioned with the shirt in Home Depot and the kid that I mentioned in the beginning, it's like sometimes you just have to take pause and be like, what's actually the best thing to do? Not best for me. What's the actual best thing to do? And that's probably the toughest one of all, is to change the phone number on the gas card and never bring it up and keep paying half of your bills because your kids are watching. And it was interesting that my son called me out and was like, Dad, come on. That's not.
Come on, Dad,
And it's interesting because the kids knew. Yeah. My son knew, he's a boy and he understands the testosterone and that. Like he knew. He's like, that's like scoring a touchdown and, going by and saying something to the cornerback on the way. That's the culture, Dad, that you're trying to get me to stop, And I did it anyway because, I make mistakes. But I definitely learned from that thing sitting in, and it was interesting because the cop was like, I can't believe we're even talking about this. Like, I would have never done that. So good on you. And I'm like, no, not good on me. I'm sitting here like an idiot,
you can't say I'm sitting in the police department.
Yeah. And it's like, here I am with my So Good hat on, and I've done free coffee for this particular branch and this particular officer. And he's like, grow up. And I'm like, that's it, grow up, and then see it for what it is. You have a former spouse that has a whole history with a person, and there's some hurt in there, and they're trying to get back at them. And just like we did when we were little boys, we threw rocks, at the people we cared about, and someone's throwing rocks at someone that they're like, you hurt me. And I'm just like, right back at you, buddy, and it's like, that's to me, at that point, I am the problem. Like, and, and people can believe whatever they want. Like they could say, well, I think you did right. My heart wasn't in the right place. I was not doing it for the right ways. Now, would I help those individuals? Absolutely, but not in that way.
Right.
And so every morning when I wake up, I try to remember those situations and be like, what am I really trying to do? What am I like? Is I really trying to help? And we mentioned like the start of So Good, where we really got traction was during COVID, during all the mask. I noticed there was just this massive, mask, no mask, vaccine, no vaccine.
Right.
And yet there were teachers in there that were trying to do both of the things. They were like telling these kids, hey, you got to do this. And they didn't know, nobody knew what was going on. And then you have this extra burden. And I was like, what if we just did free coffee for teachers? So I just started calling coffee trucks and saying, hey, let's just go to every school in West Ada, every school in Boise, every school in Nampa, every school in Tucson, every school in Marcin, Melba, and let's just do free coffee for teachers. And every time I'd go in, I'd just give a coffee to a teacher. They would just be like, thank you so much.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
It's the littlest thing.
This morning I had a Zoom, I had a Teams thing and I couldn't get the internet to work. And there were situations I found out about, like during Teams, that like there was bullying because people could see in people's houses now. I know. And so then they would turn on the camera and kids would be like, oh, that's where you live. And I never even thought about that. And then I would like come back to reality and I would be like, oh, we're fighting about masks and vaccines. And my world was like teachers and principals and administration staff. And I totally zoned out on all that. And I was just every day going and hiring coffee trucks and saying, hey, thank you for what you do. And that's really all we've been a part of. And, I try to be honest about my own failures so people can be like, oh, yeah, I've been there. I don't want to be this individual or even this corporation that's like, oh, we just do good and like we're better than you and different than you. Like, no, it takes intentional, it takes intent. You mentioned people getting frustrated. My boy's 15 and he has to drive, and I've got a Dodge Ram, nice Dodge Ram, and he's very uncomfortable driving it because he's like, his dad's truck. And we get on Eagle Road and he goes 40. Do you know how many times I've been flipped off, yelled at, pull alongside? It's tough. And when we see that, when we're behind it, all I'm thinking when I'm driving is like, this guy's going 40 and I hate him, And then you pull up alongside and it's a 15-year-old with his hands on the wheel and I can see their face. But if in the morning you're like, you know what? I'm going to be intentional. When that happens, I'm going to think maybe that person is a new driver, or maybe they just moved here. I see a guy driving down a one-way in Boise. Like maybe they just came from another state and they don't know on 8th and Main. We're just quick. We're quick to look for it. And so I would say the message of So Good is trying to go across the grain and doing good for absolutely no reason. I don't want it to be tied to anything. That's one of our main themes, is just doing good for no good reason. It's not tied to religions or politics or anything like that. It's just the right thing to do. And it's changed our lives. And if people want to be part of it, I guarantee it'll change your life for the better. Like it just does.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's just, again, you and I are just meeting for the first time today. I believe every single thing you say. And I find myself falling into these problems. Like I had, again, around the West Ada issue, I had controversy because I was, West Ada asked if I would do an interview with them. And I've done many in the past, I was like, yeah, of course. Like whatever you guys want, come sit down, have a normal conversation. No problem. People got really mad about that. And the several news organizations were very critical of me and my podcast. They'd never, I presume they'd never seen it before or cared about it at all. And I can tell you for sure that there's, again, with that incentivization structure, with like, hey, I'm the news, I have to have these shocking stories. We can really get mad at those people. And again, like I justified and, I did something petty, right. Like I'm no better, I'm no, the whole bit. But what I can tell you is there was a time in my former years when I had a former podcast where I fell into that structure, where all of a sudden people started seeing me as this crisis hub and they were reaching out. And I was like, oh, I got to talk about this because like this is a real problem. Like I got to let people know. And then what becomes even worse is even if you do a good job with like one crisis or two crises, then you're like, oh, this is my thing. This is my jam. I got to have more crisis to feed the beast, because you're no longer just like a dude talking to people about things that are so good, right? And that pressure all of a sudden became like, oh, I get it. Now I have to manufacture crises because this is what I'm feeding the monster. And that's terrible. That's really terrible. You have to look at things from a certain way. You have to reject other things that might run counter to the narrative, because if you don't have anything to say.
Right.
If you don't do that, you don't have a story. And that's one reason among many why I run straight down the center. I'm like, I will talk to everyone. I'm not a crisis hub. I'm not like, if you have some gripe with an insurance company, like, here, let me get you connected with the Department of Insurance. Right. Like if you have an issue with your HOA, you think your HOA is embezzling, listen, I'm sure a newspaper would like this. It's not for me, but like, I hope you get this ironed out. That's like, I have compassion for those people. Even, the guy, Joe Paris at KTVB, who, had made commentary about my show, I immediately was like, hey man, do you want to come on? Like, he's a news guy. His job is to talk about the news, and his job is to work for this organization that is, they need to feed that beast. And it's like, I don't think this guy's a bad guy. I've never even met him. I've chatted with him quite a bit on Instagram. I hope he comes on the show. Of course he works for an organization and they have to okay it. Totally fine. Right. But it's like, we can all see each other as people. Like, I have a lot of compassion. Everybody's just trying to get through the day. Yeah. Nobody's calling all their shots. Nobody's getting 100% of the points. Like, everybody's sacrificing something. It's like, that's fine. We can see each other as people. Even if there's something that hurt me or I feel justified and righteous in being upset about, it's like, we're still people, man.
Yeah, it's true. And, you mentioned the West Ada. That was very important to me. My kids all went to Lewis and Clark. My son was a huge fan of that teacher. They were very helpful in his life. I have a lot of friends at KTVB. I took pause and tried to see all the sides. The one thing I will say, and I don't like to touch on many of these subjects, but I try to not use the ist word as much, Yeah.
I got you.
With anything. And use more of like what actually happens. And it's like, like that was terribly insensitive,
Right.
And then someone's like, that's true. What that particular comment was insensitive, and so even around my kids, like they'll say a phrase like, oh, that was that. And I say, hold on a second. This person doesn't know anything about you. They're just making assumptions. and what they're seeing is without knowledge, and they're not there. There's no empathy. There's no compassion. That's insensitive. And I think like we just maybe take the words and you know, just as a society, you know, we're used to chatting and texting and stuff, and so we don't really communicate like we used to. And I don't want to be an old fuddy-dud, but like I read books of like George Washington and Lincoln and how they would talk, and they would really express the real issue. And the issue is, you know, that person is not being sensitive to the needs of everyone. They need some lessons. And the other thing too is anytime there's a crisis, like what happened at West Ada, he was like, I just hope things get better for everyone, for students, for teachers, for everyone. I just like to take pause and be like, what could we have done better? You know? And that's my only hope. And it will happen because I'll be part of it. We'll just keep loving students and teachers and Idaho and making it better. But when those kinds of things happen, just like in, you know, with your kids or a marriage, when you have those issues, you look at your wife and you go like, hey, let's not do this again. You know, what could I have said differently? What could I have done differently? And that's how my marriage has gotten better. I don't know how about everybody else's, but like, I don't like to go back to the why and be like, why I'm right here again? Turning left or right, you know? I like to go past that one. Now I'm still at a lot of whys where I'm like, should circle back, but I only want to go through it once or twice. Then, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
And I feel like with all those kinds of things, like I hope other school districts and other places look at it and go, hey, what could we do differently? What could we, you know, as a group done better? Because I mean, if you go to those individuals, individually, there's so many amazing people that are part of all those organizations that you mentioned, you know?
Right.
And then we just get our wires crossed and get frustrated at each other. And sometimes, to your point, and even with, you know, my situation with the former spouse, sometimes we're never going to fix it. Sometimes there's just kind of an idea. They say, you know, first impressions are the most important. And sometimes there's an impression of us that is not who we are. And it takes a strong person to just say, I'm okay with you feeling that way. I wish I could change it, and I'll do my best to live my life that way. But that's not who I am. The person that you think is not who I am. And but I'm gonna go out and help people, you know.
Yeah, and we're different, like especially with your spouse example. It's like, listen, whoever I was when I met my wife at 22,
right,
I was not that person at 26.
Yeah.
And at 26, I was not that person at 32. And whoever I was at 32, like I feel like from 40 to 43, I just turned 43. I've been like 3 different people.
Yeah.
Like it accelerated really fast in a period of time. And I know myself better now. I see myself better. I understand a lot of different things. And that makes me a different person. And, you know, we just don't know. You do your best. And you marry someone and engage in a relationship, and who you are at one point, that may actually be an accurate representation, but things change, man. Things change. And that doesn't mean that anybody is good or bad, right? You might be now a bad fit. You might not, there might be friction, like all of these things. It's like, yeah, look, you're still a good person. Like I have a family member, not my wife. I have a family member, a sibling who we just don't, there's something in me that brings out the worst in him. And that stinks, but it only stinks if my consideration is solely my relationship with him, right? It's okay. Like in reality, it's okay. If I, for whatever reason, bring out the worst in him, well then like I shouldn't want to exacerbate him or the situation. I shouldn't want to make him upset. I shouldn't be so selfish to be like, we should work through this so I can be around you more. It's like, no. If I upset you, then like, okay, I wish I didn't. And if there's something I could do to not do it, that's fine. But like, that's just kind of how things are, right? Like the world changed, he changed, I changed. And I really like get his goat just by being me, you know? And again, I think like, especially in dealing with people, it's like, you just kind of understand that people change. The world has changed a lot in the last 10 years.
Right.
Like, do you remember 2015 compared to now? I remember I was hog hunting 2015. A couple buddies of mine, and go down to we fly into Georgia where one of them lives, and then we drive to this spot where this guy takes us hog hunting at night. So we get these night vision, scopes. We got the whole gear, big old banana clips on the AR-15. We go hog hunting in these farms in Georgia, right? Peanut farms and whatnot, because these hogs are wrecking their stuff, right? And then once we get the hogs, we drive to Florida, to this little, Airbnb spot, cook the hog there a couple days. And I bring this up because I remember the then candidate Trump was running, and he was like he was like right when he was really capturing the media's attention. And we were having this conversation about it. The conversation we were having then about him, about, his intentions, about all of these things is completely different from the conversation that people have now 10 years later. And it's like, what world? The world is so different. 2015 to now. Like, Obama was still president in 2015. Yeah. Like, think of how different everything was in 2015. And yeah, man, things change. You got to have space for people to change along with it within your life.
Yeah. I think things change, but I mean, I also think they're the same. Like, I've been reading this book on Washington, Ron Chernow. He's the one who wrote the book on Hamilton that became the show. If you want to read a good book, read the book on Washington. But just the division that happened where, some people were like, we want to be under England. We think England's great. And Washington's like, no. And you had like Tories and people that were like secretly in love with England still and just trying to like, infiltrate things. And then you had like true patriots and you had all the types. And in some things, it just hasn't changed, Okay,
it's like, did you know Franklin had a bunch of burner accounts?
Right, exactly.
Like, he wrote under like 12 different aliases. It's literally Facebook where people have burner accounts and they're like arguing with each other. And it's really just like 3 people, but it looks like 50. Right. Franklin did the same thing. Yeah, he would write into papers under different names. Yeah.
So to me, humans haven't changed. And I would like to think humans haven't changed, for the good too. I mean, I my son wrestles at he's a pretty good wrestler for Mountain View. And I've had coaches text me and email me and say, hey, we went out of town for a wrestling thing and there was a kid that didn't have much. And, I saw your son, pay for a meal or we all went out to eat and that person didn't order and said they weren't hungry. And then he said, oh, no, I got you. So yeah, it has, but then I'd like to think that humanity, you and I were alive after 9/11. I saw it. I saw humanity again, I don't talk about it a lot, but I probably should mention it. But I was in Vegas and was at during the time of the mass shooting in Vegas where 58 people were killed. Humanity's still out there. We get caught up in the day-to-day life. But if something were to happen, and I've seen it, I'll say a school again. About 3 weeks ago, I went to pick up my son from Mountain View. And just as I got there, about 20 Meridian PD pulled up. And they drove on the lawn. And they were just, old Marine Corps days, just, pointing down the hallways and stuff. And I called my son and he didn't answer. And I was with other parents. And none of us talked about anything that was going on right now. No one was like, hey, who do you think should be in political office? Right. No one was talking about religion. We just all had that look in our face like, I just hope it's not one of us. And, just holding hands and hugging and talking. And, 20 minutes goes by and you're getting text from West Ada that says, hey, we've had a thing at Mountain View. It's a full lockdown. And as it turns out, it was a Snapchat and a kid was like, hey, I'm going to go do all these bad things. And just a few minutes, everyone comes out. But for that moment, it was just like 7 or 8 parents that all had that same look in the eye that was like, buddy, if you needed anything, I'd do anything for you right now. And I would. And I think it's still there. I just think we've kind of forgotten and lost it. And if I'm the messenger for the teeny little bit in Idaho about it, I'll take that mantle because that's what I want to be about, doing the good, helping other people, no matter your political status and your relationships and your race and any of that kind of stuff. I sing the national anthem a lot, and I sing it at Caldwell Night Rodeo. And it's like, it's really special for me to sing at Caldwell Night Rodeo because that's where I'm from too. See, and the ending of that is, oh, say does that Star-Spangled Banner still wave? And Francis Scott Key was talking about the flag. Back then, he wasn't talking about or the land of the free and the home of the brave. He was looking to see if it still waved. That was the big deal in the poem. But for me, it's like, does it still mean something? And does it still wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave? And for me, that's like the message I always want to tell people. It's like, does it still mean that to you? I mean, does it still fly over the land of the free? Like, would we all agree? And you would probably even get some arguments on that. And they would say, no, it's not. Like this organization isn't free and that one's not. And, so that to me is like, my daily thought is like, how do I make Idaho, better? How do I make my family better? How do I make myself, America? I do hear that, and I believe you. It has changed, but like, who says that it can't swing back? Who says the pendulum can't swing back? And so, I'm still throwing the starfish in one at a time, like we made a difference to that one. And, that's really all we can do. And so mediums like this, people like yourself, I really appreciate the time because it allows us to maybe reach a few more people, and they may say, man, I'm so frustrated. And I'm like, well, then come out with us. We can, the more, that get the message, the more that are doing good, we can right the ship, if you will.
My guy. Listen, man, how can people help? How can they participate?
So we got super lucky in the last few years. We got to go out and do the Today Show. It was really amazing for me. And I'll tell you my quick little story. When I joined the Marine Corps, I joined the day after 2000, in September 11, 2000, when that
2001,
2001. And, I saw this picture of George Bush down at the World Trade Center, and he was holding two firemen, and there was a big flag. And I was like, oh, that's what I want to do. It's World War II. I want to serve my country. And not some crazy nationalism. Like, I think we're better than everyone else. Like, I feel like everyone should have national pride, but like, I don't go around and being like, hey, we're better than you. But there was this just feeling of love from George Bush. And, I wasn't political. I just, I was like, oh, that's my president. He's down there amongst the people. So anyways, I fly to New York, and they were like, hey, Jenna Hager wants to talk to you before you go out and do the Today Show. And so I was sitting there with her, just kind of like me and you were sitting. And she was like, I want to know why you joined the Marine Corps. And so I told her that story, and I looked up, and she was kind of crying. And I realized that was her dad that I was talking about. I didn't kind of put it together that like I had joined the Marine Corps because of someone's passion for the country. And here it was coming full circle. And so I got to tell her like, hey, you're going to talk about So Good today, and you're going to help us out. But like a lot of it can be traced back to another person's kindness that went down to the World Trade Center and shook hands with a fireman and made an impression on a kid out of high school. So how can you help? The easiest thing is just to pass it on in your own way, right? Like you don't even have to reach out to me. You could just go to Starbucks and say, hey, I'm going to pay for the person behind me. You can write a letter to your teacher at, whatever school and say, hey, thank you for teaching my kid, and I hope you have a great day. You'd be blown away by what that does. But if you really want to get involved with our organization, it's sogood.org. That's where you just need to start. It has all of our information. It has all of our calendar. It has all of our merch. I say merch. I don't sell it. I give it away. I've given away thousands of t-shirts and hats. I don't really like to sell them. If somebody gives me money as a donation, that's great. But to me, giving the hat or giving the shirt is just my way of saying, hey, thank you for being a human. Thank you for being here. And I hope you have a great day. My only ask, and I tell this to teenagers, is just don't show up on like the Ada County arrest report with a So Good shirt, DUI.
Not so good.
Yeah, not so good. But yeah, how do you get involved? You get involved by just paying it forward. I'll tell you one last story. I was at Matador the other day in the village, and I saw a World War II veterans, and World War II veterans are like my people. I know they're, reaching 100, and he was with, looked like maybe his daughter. And so I told the wait staff, hey, I want to pay for their meal. So I did. And then they went and told them that I did. So they come over and they're like, hey, thank you so much. They said, but we kind of have a little bit of a problem. We have a $100 gift card to Matador, and that's why we came, and we appreciate what you've done, but we would like to pay for your food. So here's a $100 gift card to Matador. And I said, well, I already closed out, and I closed out with you, but thank you so much. So as I was leaving, I went up to a table and I said, hey, I got this $100 gift card. It's a long story, but I would like you guys to have it. I don't know you. And they were like, okay, thank you. So I left. And it was like at like 6 o'clock. Well, I went back by for some reason, and one of the people kind of waved, so I walked in, and they were like, that card's still going. They were like, we're watching it. And everyone that gets up walks over to a table, and the story keeps going. And they're like, hey, we were here. We don't understand what's going on, but we want you to have this card. And so people are always like, how do you get involved? People do get involved. They just don't really know that they're getting involved, and they don't know how. And it's easy. It's super easy. And it really, again, sometimes we see the news and we're like, oh my gosh, what's going on with humanity? And then something like that happens, and I'm like, Idaho's still around. America's still around. Human beings are still around. It's still going. So, yeah, my answer to that is, take some pause, go find somebody that you may not agree with, and just maybe hear a different side. And then if you really want to get involved, reach out to sogood.org. I'm always around, and we would love to help connect you into the community.
Thank you for coming, Parker.
Thanks for having me, man.